Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. So, just a disclaimer here at the very beginning of stuff. This episode was filmed about an hour or so before Vince McMahon tweeted out that he was retiring from the WWE. So some of the answers in this episode feel somewhat outdated, but not in such a major way that it would sort of affect the actual sort of spirit of the answer. I just wanted to throw that disclaimer out there because y'all are gonna be watching and be like, why is Steve talking about he thinks Vince is gonna be gone before the year? He clearly is already gone. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Y'all asked a bunch of great questions, so here's my answer to those. There you go. Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. It's time for another Ask WrestleJuice. There's been a lot going on even over the past 48 hours or so. Anyways, you got a bunch of questions. I'm going to get into them. Betty Frame says, what do you think is up with this TV-PG, TV-14 stuff? Says, I find it strange that after the memo leaked about Raw changing, then they backpedaled, and SummerSlam was TV-14, and then it went back to being TV-PG. What's the deal with all this stuff? So I think here's the deal. I think number one, sadly, it's much ado about nothing. I get the feeling after going and reading the actual guidelines for the TV ratings, it kind of feels like they just check the shows from time to time to see where it sort of fits in. It wouldn't shock me if this was actually a retroactive move, not a preemptive move in anticipation of something more dramatic, of blood, of more cursing, of more adult-oriented storylines. I feel like WWE, creatively speaking, has zero to do with this ratings change. The way it was sort of broke. So Andrew Zarian, who obviously does know people in WWE's front office, who knows people at NBC, Universal, or USA Network, whatever it is, sort of broke the story in a tweet when a memo got out that WWE programming was going to change to TV-14. And then that was sort of rescinded. And he's been reporting on this the whole time. So it seems like there's some sort of fluctuation going on. It's just when the original story broke, it was, and it's not, I'm not saying this is on Andrew's part or was a mistake on his part. But, I mean, it's kind of a big deal that, like, the idea that WWE is going back to a TV-14 rating, and people just sort of ran with it. I feel like if they had quietly just sort of shifted the rating to TV-14, it'd be kind of a blip on the radar. People would probably have noticed, but I don't think it would have been that big of a deal because nothing's going to change. This is seemingly, I think, more just sort of a realignment of where the program already is. If anything, we'll probably not get certain, like when Brock Lesnar shows up and says shit, it probably won't be bleeped because they've actually said shit on Raw before. Vince McMahon, who is still the head of creative for now, doesn't like blood on his programming. The sponsors probably prefer blood is kept off the programming if possible. So I honestly just think the bottom line is this is much ado about nothing. It's possible they'll still even bleep the word shit in the first hour of TV of Raw. I'm not sure if they're going to allow anything close to that on SmackDown, which is on Fox, which is a broadcast network, which is different than a cable network. So the bottom line is, from all the reporting that's out there, and even just sort of looking into like what TV rating guidance is, it feels like this is much ado about nothing. I don't think that it's going to lead to any creative changes whatsoever. I think that probably has more to do with the second question that we're going to address today, and that's about Triple H. Lane Odell asks, do you think that with Triple H taking back his position as EVP, Talent Relations, that it's going to lead him to taking NXT back from Bruce and Vince and making it better? No, I think that ship has sailed. I do think there is something to be said about Triple H taking that role back, though. I think that probably his health scare late last year was probably a good reason to step back from certain duties. But I also get the feeling that now with Stephanie sort of firmly in charge, even if it's considered an interim CEO position, I would be shocked, especially with the nastier allegations that dropped in that last Wall Street Journal report, where there was a $7.5 million payout to a former talent because to keep quiet on the fact that Vince had coerced her into sex. That is super damning at Vince or for Vince. And I don't see him. He's probably, when all is said and done, he's going to be removed from the company. I mean, you can try to say that, oh, well, he owns this, that, the other. The board of directors has the ability to remove him from power at WWE. I don't know about like him forcing him to sell or anything like that. He's not going to be in power past the end of this year. I firmly believe that. It'd be shocking. I'm not going to eat a piece of paper or nothing, but it would be shocking if he was able to get back into power after all is said and done with this investigation, because I get the feeling it's going to turn up even more nasty stuff. I don't think the Wall Street Journal is done, and that investigation is going to play out. And so at that point, you got to ask yourself, okay, who's going to be in charge of creative? This would seem to be Triple H, being the EVP talent relations guy, would seem to be a step closer to him taking over, creatively speaking. I could totally see that happening. It actually would make a ton of sense, given that Stephanie is being so well received as the interim CEO. Everybody seems to like her. She's got everybody's support. Seemingly, she's got Nick Khan's support. I get the feeling that Vince's days heading creative are probably done by the end of this year. So I think that would have more effect on the creative balance in WWE than any TV rating. I think we will see changes, and hopefully they're going to be for the better. Let's go ahead and move on to some more of these questions. Mr. Jones is me. He says, what do you think happened with Baron Corbin? A few years ago, it looked like he was going to be one of the top heels in the company, but at this point, he's always used to enhance a babyface that WWE likes. Did it take a turn, or was it always bound to end up like this? Oh, man, I don't know. Like, if you believe rumor and innuendo, Baron Corbin made a few enemies backstage when he spoke up about, like, concussion stuff. There's a report out there about that. Who knows if that's true or not? I don't know. I like Baron Corbin. I think you're right. I think that it looked like at one point he was going to be one of the top heels. I don't know that that was ever in the cards for him, though. I don't know if it ever suited his strengths as the type of heel he is, which is actually a bit closer to like a Miz type heel than like a Seth Rollins type heel. So yeah, I like Baron. I think that he's perfectly suited to be sort of a plop him down sort of anywhere guy. I think he could still be a top heel. It'll take a lot of like sort of rewriting on his part. But yeah, I don't know. If you look at him, I'm not sure if he was ever really cut out to be a top guy heel. There's got to be a lot of different elements in place, and I think he lacks some of them. Blake Whitehouse says, if Ring of Honor's TV was on Thursday, like you and Larson suggested, how do you think it would affect Tony Khan's relationship with Impact? Or would it be better to compete against NXT on a Tuesday? Yeah, Ring of Honor probably be on Tuesdays. Probably compete with NXT. I don't know where it's gonna air though. I don't think it's gonna be on television. I think it's gonna be on a streaming service. In which case, I don't know if it really matters where it's at, or I'm sorry, when it's at. Because like right now, technically, Dark competes with NXT in a way because it airs a couple hours prior, but it's on YouTube. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be necessarily on Thursday. I don't think it's going to be live, that's for sure. And live is sort of the premium thing. But I don't know. Maybe he'll be able to pull it off. If he does pull it off, Tuesday or Thursday seems likely. But if he really likes that time slot, wouldn't he put Rampage there? I don't know. Torchbearer91 says, do you think it's time for Jericho to step back or take a break from AEW TV? Feels like everything with the Jericho Appreciation Society has started to spin its wheels, and I'm feeling it's dragging down all the talent involved. I'm reading this question because it's been upvoted a bunch, so maybe a bunch of you want me to address it. Kind of feel like no. I actually kind of like the work Jericho Appreciation Society's been doing. I don't think it's spinning its wheels yet. I think they're just coming off, literally, this past week, a hot feud with Eddie Kingston and the rest of the Blackpool Combat Club. Interested to see where they go next. Jericho is a potential main eventer for All Out because of the injury situation. If Punk's back, clearly it's going to be Punk versus Mox. But if Punk's not back in time, Jericho's got to be considered one of the top contenders to fight Mox for that top title. But no, I don't think it's dragging down the talent. It's going to be interesting to see tomorrow for Death Before Dishonor where Garcia lands. If he wins that pure title off Wheeler Yuta, what are they going to do with that? What are they going to do with him? Is he going to stick around in Ring of Honor? I don't know. Sean Chan says AEW, while still entertaining, seems almost directionless right now. Do you think this is due to the long list of injuries, or is it a creative issue? If it's the latter, who could Tony bring on to get back on track? I think there's all sorts of names that he could bring in. Guys like what's his name? Jimmy Jacobs. Why did I have such a hard time coming up with his name? He could bring in a guy like Jimmy Jacobs. He could bring in all sorts of names to help him with creative. I do think that the injuries is a major issue. There's no way he could have prepared for Bryan Danielson, CM Punk being out. I think that really stung him. I don't think he was really prepared for the MJF situation. So I think he's doing probably the best he could. I am of the opinion that he probably could use some more creative minds there to help out, but I'm not backstage. So what do I know? I think it's directionless? Yeah, but that's an injury issue. I mean, he's got his main event guy on the shelf. CM Punk was his plus delta, and he's on the shelf. It's hard to plan for that because you sort of start there, I would think, and then work your way down. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's more has to do with injuries as opposed to creative. And because of that, you can't really say if, the creative should be much better or not, because he's got to deal with that stuff. Let's see here. Moving on. Here we go. Robert Green says, between WWE and AEW, can name one wrestler or group that is being underutilized in each company that you want them to use better or even start using, period. Mustafa Ali. 1,000% Mustafa Ali. I think he's a wildly creative talent. He's one of the best wrestlers they have. He's really good on the mic. He's got charisma. He's fantastic. They need to use him more, and it bums me out that they don't. Caro Sword asks, do you think with 2 high production wrestling shows on TV that indie wrestling can ever generate the buzz it had a couple of years ago? Do you think stars can emerge outside of the mainstream these days, or that any smaller promotions can find buzz outside of activity influenced by AEW or WWE? Yes, I think that it's possible. I think GCW is sort of on the precipice, and I think that their Big Hammerstein show was kind of a mixed bag, given that the spotlight seemed to be a little bit less on the actual stars of GCW and people coming in from outside of GCW. So yeah, I mean, is it more difficult? Yeah, maybe, because like AEW essentially is the natural evolution of where the indie scene was a couple of years ago. Like when you say there's 2 high production wrestling shows on TV, the indie wrestling scene had the big buzz it had a couple of years ago. Well, that morphed into AEW. That got so popular, it became AEW. And AEW, let's face it, has a roster with 3 or 4 major indie promotions worth of talent, probably more, under their roof. So I kind of feel like that's just sort of the natural way of things. The indie scene does seem to be extremely healthy these days. I mean, hell, even smaller promotions out here in Sacramento, which prior to the pandemic and prior to AEW really didn't have that much going on. It's all a buzz these days. There's a lot going on, even out here in Sacramento. If you go down to the Bay an hour and a half away, oh my God, it is blowing up out there. I feel like the indie scene is blowing up, but I mean, I don't know what kind of buzz it can really get to compete with like what AEW is doing, or maybe New Japan. But yeah, I don't know. I see plenty going on in the indie circuit that people can be proud of. But I mean, yeah, getting buzz in any way, shape, or form these days is kind of difficult to do. Rick Zeal. I'm sorry. I already sort of answered that question. Courtney Coburn says, do you think it's about time Seth Rollins becomes champion again? He spent the last year losing pay-per-view matches and putting over new talent. He's a reliable worker and is over even with his current gimmick. Hate to see his talent and his passion for the business be diminished. If it fits, yeah, I could see that. If they split those titles, yeah. But right now is Roman's time, and I think that Roman being top champion. I know there's plenty of people out there who think it might not be working. I am not one of them. I think that Roman having both titles elevates that entire sort of scene. They have a strong mid-card with Gunther as the Intercontinental Champion. And who is it? Lashley right now is the U.S. Champion. Although, was Lashley even on TV last week? I don't think he was. He's got a SummerSlam match coming up right now anyways. So, I mean, should Rollins be champion? I don't know if he needs to be champion, but I would be cool seeing another championship reign with Seth Rollins. He's absolutely deserving of it. But I feel like because he's already done so much, he doesn't really need to have the title. And that's why I think it's probably better off to have somebody like Cody or maybe even Drew at Clash of the Castle take those titles off of Roman. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Cody's going to be the guy to take those titles off of Roman. I think that's going to be a big deal after WrestleMania next year. But then at some point, look, Seth Rollins is going to be champion again. That's absolutely going to happen. But they've done a decent job of booking him in feuds where he's properly utilized and he's a major part of Raw. And if you have that, that's kind of, that's a lot of currency right there. If you have somebody who doesn't need the title but is still super over and is carrying a big part of your show, that right there is very helpful to have. Seth doesn't need the title to be relevant. He's sort of above that at this point, but his time will come again, and they'll put the titles back on him again. Leo Bernal says, do you think Drew McIntyre winning the unified titles at Clash of the Castle is the right call, or should they wait till Cody comes back? They should wait for Cody. As much as I would love to see Drew at Clash of the Castle, that place would absolutely blow up. It would blow up. It's got to be Cody at this point. It's got to be Cody. His return is going to be massive, just huge. Pika Pal says, do you think Theory is getting genuine heel heat or go away heat? I honestly don't know. It's hard to read the minds of like a mass of people. He's got kind of go away heat with me. I never care to see him on my TV. It's a shame because I think he's got all the tools. I think he has all the potential. But I think that right now he's way too one note. I don't believe he could beat Lesnar even after a last man standing match with Roman Reigns. I don't believe he could beat Roman Reigns even after a last man standing match with Brock Lesnar. He's just not believable as a Money in the Bank guy. So I don't know what kind of heat he's got. He does get a reaction. He gets a lot of people booing. To me, that says he's got heel heat and not go away heat. Because when people have go away heat, the crowd just sort of tunes out. And I don't see them doing that now. Let's see here. Johnny Burney says, what do you think are going to be the top matches for All Out? Well, we've got about 6 weeks or so. I think it's probably going to be Punk versus Mox. Probably. But, I mean, if it's not going to be that, then it's going to be Mox versus another bigger name. I don't think that's going to be Danielson because I don't know if he's going to be back. And on top of that, they're in a stable together. And on top of that, Danielson would have to win because he's already lost a couple of title shots. So, I mean, it's probably Jericho. They probably just elevate Jericho. He can do it. Well, he just broke his nose, but I think that could be fixed by All Out. I think it'd probably be Jericho. There's no other big names up there. Unless it's like, I don't know, Sting or something, but that'd be weird. I don't know if you want to do that. You don't want like a 20-minute single Sting match. Kendall Wells, who should John Cena's last match be against? Oh, Cody. Give Cody that honor. Give Cody that honor, man. I would have said Austin Theory before, but they sort of buried him for me. Tyler Otterbane, how much do you think names matter in wrestling? He believes Dolph Ziggler could have been face of the company if not for his name being Dolph Ziggler. I think names matter. I think they matter to an extent. But I think at a certain point, once you sort of take somebody, I don't know. I guess not. I mean, if Cena had remained prototype, I'm not sure if that would have worked. I'm not sure if people would have really bought into the rapping prototype guy, but what do I know? Maybe it would have worked. I don't know. What are some other names? Like Roman Reigns is a good name. Dean Ambrose was that was a name. I don't know. Names don't really matter. People like Dolph Ziggler. They liked it. They popped huge for him when he did that cash in. I think he could have been. I think Dolph probably could have been close to face of the company, but he had some unfortunate concussion issues that derailed one of his title reigns, and then they just sort of had him lose a lot. Dolph has sort of suffered from not evolving his character that much. I think if he had that trait, if he had that Jericho knack for reinvention, like his reinventions have not been that dramatic. He's just always sort of been Dolph Ziggler, good guy or bad guy. Yeah, his problem, like look at Edge. Look at how Edge reinvents himself. If Dolph Ziggler had that ability or that creative freedom, he probably could have been face of the company type guy. Stephen James has Jim Ross, good old JR, ruined his legacy with how bad he's been as an AEW announcer. Or has he always been this bad and we're just noticing? No, Jim Ross is a legend. He is a legend. He was legendary. He was great back during the Attitude Era. He was amazing. He was absolutely fantastic. But like all of us, he got owed. And when you get owed, it's just more difficult to keep up. And that's where he's at now. He's trying to keep up. He's doing what he can. And it unfortunately, it just doesn't really work. It sort of sucks sometimes. And that makes me sad. But so yeah, and I like that they only have him on for the second hour. But that's gonna come to an end at some point. I think maybe at the end of this year, they'll transition him maybe to like a backstage role or something. But then a lot of people still like JR, so I don't know. Maybe I should cut him some slack. Yeah. Anyways, we'll end on this one. Michael Bullitt says, I know I hear people saying that WWE wants to sell, but do you really think any major company would buy WWE with their Saudi deal? Yup, I do. I absolutely think they would. I don't necessarily know how the Saudi deal stuff would shake out. And by the way, this is a good question. I think it's a good question, but the bottom line is Fox and then NBC Universal pay big money to license WWE content. Those fees will only continue to rise. So even if you take the Saudi money out of the equation, it would probably benefit NBC Universal or Fox to simply purchase WWE for probably, I don't know what, 5 times what a TV deal would be worth. So within a decade or so, probably less than that. I think I heard Meltzer actually say that once before. Probably within a decade or less, you'd have made your money back and you're able to reap all the revenue from advertising and having WWE being able to monetize WWE's product. They wouldn't have to license it because they'd own it for Peacock. They wouldn't have to license it. They'd own it for television. And that's something that they would be able to do in perpetuity. WWE has proven to be a brand that is global and has staying power. So even if they were to cease operations with the Saudi Arabian government, they would still be making money hand over fist within probably about half a decade or a decade. I don't know what they would do with the Saudi Arabia deal. I don't know. They would probably have to honor it throughout the rest of the 5 years or so that it still remains in place. If there's anything too egregious that happens from this point on with the Saudi government, they'd try to find a way out of it. But yeah, I think that and who knows if they'd re-up it or not. But yeah, I totally believe that they would continue. They would be fine with it. We'll actually end on this one. Josh says, you look like you're in your late 30s or 40s. How old are you? I responded here with 23, which clearly, if you can see the wrinkles on my face, I am not 23 years old. No, I'm closer to what you suspect I am. I'm in my early 40s. So there you go. Also, by the way, check out this video right here. It's my reaction to the Ric Flair video. Shout out to all the new audience members here at WrestleJuice. I know we get new viewers here when people in the comments say things like, did anybody ever tell you look like John Cena? Or did anybody ever tell you look like Mark Wahlberg? So welcome, new viewers. And yes, I've heard that quite a bit from a lot of people over the past 10 or 12 years. Thanks for watching. We'll see you over at that Flair video.